now talking about 4.6. We just copied down the vocabulary on page 223. The first thing we're talking about is adjacent angles. Okay? Adjacent angles are two angles that are next to one another. Okay, just like two parking spaces. If you park next to someone, you are adjacent to them. The person sitting in the desk next to you is adjacent to you. However, you have to be very careful. What does the second line of the definition say? They cannot have what?
No common interior.
Common interior points. Well, what does that mean? Here's point X, and here's angle 1 and angle 2. Is point X and angle 1? Yes. Is point X and angle 2? No. So they don't have common interior points. How could we make two angles and they have common interior point? To the big angle, right? Angle 1 and angle 3, do they both share point X?
Yes.
Yes. So are angle 1 and angle 3 adjacent?
Yes.
No, they are not. Write that down. Have this in your notes. Angle 1 and angle 3 are non-adjacent. Okay, why? Simply because they overlap. If two angles overlap, they cannot be adjacent. They have to be side by side, meaning they share a common side, and they cannot overlap. That's where you get common interior points. Okay, like point X. Questions? Angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. Angle 1 and angle 3 are non-adjacent, or they are not adjacent. Okay? Anybody else? Yes?
Why aren't they adjacent?
Because they overlap, because point X is in angle 1 and it's in angle 3, right? Angle 1's got X, and angle 3 would look like this. It's also got X. Look at the definition. It says they have no common interior points. Common means the same. So angle 1 and angle 3 both have X in them. They can't be adjacent. Okay, they can't share any points. Good question. Anybody else? Nash?
Adjacent angles can't have any. They can't have anything in common.
They can have the side in common, but they can't have any points in common. Okay? All right. So let's do one more example. You tell me which angles are adjacent. Angle 1 and angle 2, are they adjacent?
Yes.
How about 2 and 4?
No.
Are they adjacent? They don't overlap. Are 2 and 4 adjacent?
Yes.
They're not side by side, right? They don't share a side. 2 and 4 are not adjacent. Tricky, tricky. Write it down if you didn't know that. How about 1 and 4? Are 1 and 4 adjacent? Yes, they are. How about 1 and 3? No, non-adjacent. Okay, so make sure, adjacent angles is not difficult. Don't make it harder than it is. Okay, it's like two cars parked side by side in parking spaces. Okay, if one car parks crooked in the parking space, then they would not be adjacent. If they overlapped for some reason, they're not adjacent. Angle 1 and angle 2, adjacent. Angle 2 and angle 3, adjacent. Angle 3 and angle 4, adjacent. 1 and 4, adjacent. 2 and 4, not adjacent. 1 and 3, not adjacent. Okay? All right, let's move on. The next one is linear pair. You've got linear pair, and then you've got right angles and congruent supplements. Let's talk about linear pair. A linear pair, the definition, two angles are a linear pair if their non-common sides are opposite rays. The way I like to say that is, two angles make a straight line. Right? If I have two angles and their non-common side, meaning this side and this side, are opposite rays, then that means they make a straight line. Okay, angle 1 and angle 2 are linear pairs. Likewise, angle 1 and angle 2 are what? Not only do they make a linear pair, but they're adjacent, which we just learned, but what I was looking for is that they are supplementary. So linear pairs are also supplementary. Well, what does it mean to be supplementary? Go ahead and write that down. Linear pairs equal 180. Why? Because they're supplementary. Supplementary angles add up to 180. Linear pairs add up to 180 degrees. Okay? All of that goes together. Can you tell me another linear pair? What's another linear pair? We said 1 and 2. What's another linear pair?
4 and 3.
4 and 3 are a linear pair. 2 and 3 are a linear pair. What else? 1 and 4 are a linear pair. So you've got 4 linear pairs going on there. You need to be able to see that. Each one of those linear pairs adds up to 180. Right? 180, 180, 180, 180. All the way around. Okay? Questions? Any questions on linear pair? Alright, moving right along. All right angles are congruent. If I do the plus sign and I tell you that this is a right angle, okay, angle 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all right angles, and angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, is congruent to angle 3, is congruent to angle 4. Why? Because they're all right angles. All, that theorem, theorem 4.3, I told you I'm not worried about the name of it. The right angles congruence theorem says that all right angles are congruent. Okay? So if I tell you that angle A is a right angle and angle B is a right angle, what can you say about angle A and angle B? They are congruent. And that's self-explanatory. Okay? But we have a theorem that states that. Any questions? Alright. These next two. If two angles are supplementary to the same angle, if two angles are supplementary to the same angle, then they are congruent. Or if two angles are complementary to the same angle, they are congruent. Okay? Let's do this as an example. If this one is 130, and this one is 20, and this one has to be 30.
It has to.
That didn't
equal
work
the
out.
180.
That didn't work out.
At all.
They all have
Let's
to
try that
equal the
again.
180?
Let's do this. If this one is 130, and this one is 50, right? Because they are a what?
Adjacent.
You just learned it. LP.
Linear pair.
They are a linear pair. Then this angle down here would also have to be 130. Why? Because these two are a linear pair, meaning they add up to 180. Then what did we just prove this angle and this angle to be? They are congruent. They are both supplementary to the same angle. 130 was supplementary to 50, and 130 was supplementary to 50. They are supplementary to the same angle. Then what must be true about them? They must be congruent. This drawing here in particular, guys. Now, I've tolerated it, but somebody's going to move their seat if they continue to talk when I'm talking. Do I have your attention? David, do I have your attention? This angle is supplementary to this angle. This angle is supplementary to the same angle. Therefore, these two angles have to be congruent. We have another name that we're fixing to get to that these two angles are. What is the relationship between these two angles? Starts with a V. They're vertical. Vertical angles are congruent. Isn't this an X? Right? Vertical angles make an X. Vertical angles are congruent. If this one's 50 what would this angle have to be?
50.
Why? Vertical angles. All you have to do is say vertical angles. Vertical angles. Okay? But I have to go over it because you're still a little foggy on it. All right, let's do one of the ones with the complementary. Could do something like this. 30 and 60 add up to what? 90. That means that these two angles, what's their relationship? They're complementary. They're also adjacent, you're right. But they are complementary. That's the way I want you to think. 30 and 60 are complementary. Because of the box, what do I know is true about these two angles? They're also complementary. They also add up to 90. That's what the box tells me. So if this one is 60, what does this one have to be?
30.
30. So let's look at this definition. If two angles are complementary to the same angle, then they are congruent. This one's complementary to this angle. This one's complementary to this angle. And what happened? These two angles are what? They are congruent. 30 equals 30. So they are congruent. Okay? Those are the best examples that I can give you. As we do some more and more examples in your book, you'll see some more and better examples. Okay? The last thing that we have to talk about, we already said if two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary. So we've already said that. And then the last one, they are vertical angles. We've already talked about that. But one more time, if this one is 40, you should be able to tell me the other three angles just like that. Instantly, how much is this one? 40 by what? How do you know that? Vertical angle. So it's not enough that you be able to tell me that it equals 40. Now you have to be able to tell me why it equals 40. Okay? You have to be able to tell me 40 equals 40 by vertical angles. Now, what's the measurement of this angle? 140. And what's the reason? They're supplementary. A better way would just be to say they're a linear pair. That these two angles are a linear pair. That means that they are supplementary. That means that they add up to 180. You just say, hey, they're a linear pair. All right? If I know that this one's 140, then what is this one? 140. What's the reason?
Vertical pair.
If you're talking about these two angles, you would say that they are vertical. What if I said, why is this true? If that one's 40, then this one has to be 140. What reason would it be there? Linear pair. So guys, it boils down to, right, if you've got this, right, then these two angles have to add up to what? Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. If you've got this, right, angle 1 and angle 2, a linear pair, what do they have to add up to? 180. They're supplementary, they add up to 180. If you've got this, right, and we're talking about angle 4 and angle 4, then what's the relationship there? They are congruent by what? Vertical angles. It boils down to, 4.6 boils down to those three ideas. Either they're going to add up to 90 degrees, if they're complementary. They're going to add up to 180 if it's a linear pair, i.e. supplementary. Or they're vertical and they are congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. I hope you've got that written down, because that's basically what this information boils down to. Okay? All right, let's get our workbook out and do a few examples. Get your workbook out. Somebody tell me what page we're on in our workbook. Now let's practice with a few examples.